What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 61 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. The NBA season is 1 month out, and we're coming to an end with this ranking series, kind of slowly but surely. In the last episode, we ranked our top 10 defensive wings. Before that, we did our top 10 defensive guards. Before that, we did our top 10 offensive players, top 10 playmakers, top 10 scorers. Today's episode is the top 10 defensive bigs. These are the defensive anchors, the guys who you build your entire defensive unit around them, whether it's their rim protection, their ability to switch, their schematic versatility. And Sean and I are going to attempt to rank the top 10 defenders that going into the playoffs will give you the best chance to win a championship from that big spot. So Sean, what are some of the things you kind of looked for and valued most to narrow down your list to 10 guys?
I do value a lot the bigs that can just legitimately anchor your defense, whether that be in drop or just being a legitimate presence at the rim. And there's something to deterring shots at the rim because it's the most valuable shot in basketball. So that matters a lot. I think being able to be versatile from a scheme standpoint is super important. We talked about one particular person off air that, in general, like, probably grades out well, I'm sure, as a regular season defender, but due to the fact that he's old, can't move, and is not very isn't like versatile in terms of different coverages, wouldn't even get sniffed as a consideration for this list. Those are just some of the things I value.
Yeah, the big thing is the playoffs. Like it's like you can be, for example, if you're an elite drop defender, you can build an elite defense around that in the regular season because the scheming isn't as intentional, and you're also not facing the same night-to-night talent. So, not to, like, rain on the parade of any team, but if you go against the Brooklyn Nets, how many pull-up shooting threats do they really have to pressure drop coverage? Whereas if you go into a 7-game series against the Indiana Pacers or the Cleveland Cavaliers and all you can do is drop, all of a sudden you're losing a lot of value. So, my thing is, with these bigs specifically, I think one really, really important thing is the ability to defend the primary action. And we're in an era where pick and roll is pretty much always the primary action, except for like a few offenses. And so that means you need to be able to defend the pick and roll at a high level. Because in the playoffs, what we've seen time and time again is if there's even the smallest weakness in your game, offenses are going to try to exploit it. So, for example, if you're a big who's an amazing free safety, you're so good in the back line, you're just a monster rim protector, but your positioning is bad against pick and roll, all of a sudden, you're going to be put in 25 pick and rolls. And that's your new role on defense. Can you do it? And then with that, I think the ability to defend the primary action, but then also execute a bunch of different coverages. So, like I said, if you're not facing a great pull-up shooter, drop isn't much of a problem. We kind of talked about this off air, but if you're facing Orlando in the playoffs, drop is perfectly fine most of the time because they don't. Before Desmond Bain, they didn't have a single pull-up shooting threat. But against Cleveland, you need to be able to maybe switch or maybe hedge. Same with New York against Brunson, you need to be able to switch or hedge. So I think as we get to the top of this list, we start running into guys that are like, you are elite in the primary action, you're elite away from the play, you're elite at the rim and on the perimeter, you can execute every scheme, and that's at the end of the day what we're looking for.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the guys that we maybe briefly mentioned before we go into our honorable mentions. Just a couple of guys that I will throw out there that, I thought were worthy enough to at least take a peek, but never seriously consider them. Goga Bitadze, I did consider Al Horford and Donovan Clingan. I think Clingan's awesome. it's just not time yet.
Clingan's one of my heavier honorable mentions, so I'll wait a second to talk about him. I've got him 13th. He's like my 10 through 13 was all kind of like battling for 10, so I do think Clingan could have gotten onto the list. I'll talk about him a little bit more in a sec, but my kind of 4 guys that I briefly considered were same as you, Goga Bitadze. I also threw Jonathan Isaac in there. He's one of those guys that I don't really know what to do with. I didn't even know if we should consider him a forward or a big. He's kind of like one of those.
Have him on the last list, so
right. So I knew we considered him a big, but I'm saying even before the wings list, like I had him as a wing initially, and then I was like, no, he's more of a big. Plays the 5 a little bit, usually plays the 4, kind of one of those free safety guys. He can switch on to multiple positions, but I didn't really know what to do with him. 1, injury history. 2, the lack of offense making it hard to give him big minutes. But then 3. The fact that I don't really know if there's anything at this point, like since all the injury, that he like does exceptionally well on defense. He kind of feels like one of those guys that's like, I can do everything, but I'm not a master of anything. Like jack of all trades, master of none. And I feel like all of the guys in my top 10 have a pinpoint superpower. Isaiah Stewart's another guy that I very briefly considered, and I know you're probably going to want to talk about him a little bit more. You're probably higher on him than I am. And then my other guy that I just kind of looked at, I was like, okay, you're cool. Daniel Gafford. I think Daniel Gafford's like just huge vertical presence, good drop defender, good rebounder. I wanted to consider him.
Who are your more careful like, or heavier cuts. Consideration?
Yeah. So I'll talk about Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan was already one of the best drop defenders in the league last year. So a guy that can be in the primary action. Monster rim protector. Just crazy shot blocking numbers. I actually think because Wemby didn't qualify because of games played, Donovan Clingan led the league in blocks per 75, like blocks per possession, because Wemby didn't reach like the qualification games. So just monster shot blocker. There are 3 big weaknesses though with Clingan, and I think 2 of them are fixable. One of them is kind of like always going to be a limitation. The one that's always going to be a limitation is the foot speed. He's just not that fast. So like when you in the regular season, I think he could be a top 10 defender. But when you get in deep in the playoffs and it's like, okay, we need you to maybe switch, or we need you to step out 30 feet and pick up, or we need you to cover a lot of ground in this closeout or this rotation. I do think he lacks compared to the guys I have above him. And I just don't know how much, like he'll definitely improve in that regard, but I don't think it'll ever be just like a strength. It's pretty clearly a limitation. The 2 that I think he can fix are 1, fouls a lot, and that's a normal rookie thing. He fouls a lot. I think that'll get better. 2, conditioning. He can't really play between the fouling and the lack of conditioning. He can't play like 36 minutes a game. I don't know how many he ended up averaging over the season. I think it was like 25. So those are the 2 things I'm really looking for in his sophomore season. It's like, is your conditioning better? Are you fouling less? Because the drop defense and rim protection is enough for me to already give him top 10 consideration.
Yeah.
Also, awesome. I'd like to point out, Portland, we talked about this with Toumani Camara. Portland had the number 2 defense over the last 41 games of the season. And as much as that was Toumani Camara, it was also Donovan Clingan taking the starting 5 minutes because Ayton was hurt. So, shout out Donovan Clingan.
Shout out Donovan Clingan. Who are your other ones?
My other ones are Walker Kessler. So we could talk about Kessler if you want. Did you have him on your list, or was he one of your honorable mentions as well?
Kessler is on my list.
He's on your list. Okay, so we'll wait to talk about Kessler then. And then my other honorable mention, my number 11, first guy off, was Jared Allen. Allen was a tough one, man. I think Allen kind of checks the boxes we're looking for. Can defend the primary action, can drop or switch. We saw that a lot with the Cavs. He can do a couple things. Pretty good rim protector. Actually, like very good rim protector positionally. Good rebounder. He kind of fits into that Jonathan Isaac mold I talked about, where Jared Allen, I don't think, is exceptional at any defensive skill. I think he can switch, but like isn't great on switches. I think he can drop, but there are better drop defenders. I think he's a good rebounder, but there's better rebounders. And it's just like down the list, I think, like I said, all of the guys in my top 10, I think, have a superpower. And Jared Allen, like to split hairs, I actually had Jared Allen 9th or 10th, I think, when I first made my rough draft. But when it came down to splitting hairs, I was like, these other guys have like something you could really point to as a superpower, and I don't think he does.
Yeah, so my 3 major cutoffs, if you will, were Jonathan Isaac, Isaiah Stewart, and Jared Allen. Beef Stew was awesome. I think all year long he was awesome. The wrecking ball kind of motor and energy that he provides for them defensively, more than mobile, can do multiple different coverages for that Detroit team. I just don't think, because of kind of how he plays, he can have a true impact, as big of an impact as some of the other guys on the list, or at least in my top 10. Jared Allen, I think you kind of hit all the points. I think Jared Allen is like the perfectly just good NBA player. That's kind of how I feel about Jared Allen. Kind of on both ends of the floor. He's just perfectly good. Like you said, good rebounder, there's better. Really good in drop, there's better drop guys. Decently mobile, but there's just guys that do it better than him, obviously. So, and then Jonathan Isaac, I feel a little bit higher on. I think he still does have the athletic traits and is still a good enough athlete to wreak havoc in the passing lanes, be a good backline defender to kind of help when Orlando tries to get creative with their defensive coverages, can still switch out legitimately, guard different positions. He's kind of a tough one to kind of evaluate for a multitude of different reasons, but I did have Jonathan Isaac.
Let me say, one of the things that pushed me back on Jonathan Isaac, because I used to actually think he was like a top 5 defender at one point, and maybe he was in 2020. Like, Jonathan Isaac used to be a demon. I think Jonathan Isaac, actually, I will say he probably has a superpower, and it's his ranginess on the back line. Like, as a free safety, his ability to cover ground and get above the rim. I think that's probably a superpower. My kind of like hangback with Jonathan Isaac is he kind of fits the mold of what I talked about, where I don't really know how much you can do with him when he's in the primary action. It kind of feels like you just have to switch. And on Orlando, I think that's doable because of how much size, athleticism, and defensive resistance they have in general. But like, I don't think Jonathan Isaac's a great hedge defender. I don't think he can really drop. I don't really like him as a primary rim protector in the middle because he's not very wide. He's kind of just like that lanky 4 build. And we kind of saw that when they moved him to the 5 against Cleveland in the first round last year. He was the starting 5 in that series for, I don't know if it was the entire series, but I know he started at the 5 a few games. And it just, like, the defense wasn't what it was when they had, like, a traditional 5, like Goga or Wendell Carter Jr. So that's kind of my pushback with Isaac. It's like when he's in the primary action, you kind of have to switch. So if he were on a team that, for example, like the Clippers, where you have to switch with Norman Powell or James Harden, it's like, can he really play the 5 or can he really defend the primary action at a super high level? I'm not sure. And I'm just not as confident in that. Who was your number 10?
So my number 10. My number 10. My number 10 is. I know we are just off to a roaring start. My number 10 is Jaren Jackson Jr., the former Defensive Player of the Year. I have him at 10. I think the obvious drawbacks of Jaren Jackson Jr. honestly. The biggest thing throughout his entire career, which is why he's never really hit the same peak or been able to even like surpass that 2022 season, 2023 season where he won Defensive Player of the Year, is because his weaknesses are the exact same. He fouls a lot, and he's in a much better role defensively when he can be that backline guy, and he's not. Doesn't provide as much impact where he is your drop big or where he is the true anchor of the defense because of the fact that he's fine in drop. I'll even say he's good in drop, but he's just a bad rebounder compared to.
So you saying he's good in drop is higher than I would say. I'd say he's actually kind of bad in drop. I don't like his pick and roll defense at all.
Even further develops my point. Sure, we'll go from ranging between below average to slightly above average.
That's fair.
I mean, easily, if I were to look at, maybe that's just a better talking point, easily the weakest drop big on the list. And there's like a couple other guys I would say are not even great at it, but easily the weakest drop big on the list. And just not an effective rebounder or as effective of a rebounder compared to everybody else we've talked about. As a matter of fact, if you were to look at defense or adjusted defensive rebounding success rate, Jaren Jackson Jr. is actually dead last out of everybody in my top 10 in adjusted defensive rebounding success rate. So you combine that with all the other stuff that I've talked about. That's honestly the biggest reason why he has never truly elevated into elite top 5 categories in terms of defensive bigs or defensive players in general. Now, what he is great at is being that backline defense, being able to provide some versatility defensively, can switch, not necessarily like 1 through 5 or anything, but mobile enough, can honestly be a freak free safety on the back end. We've seen him have high impact moments. There's just going to be some series where it doesn't matter because teams are going to play the maybe Edie and Jaren fit off the floor to where you're only going Jaren, and then you just lose a lot of his defensive impact. But I don't want to take away what Jaren does in the passing lane as a help defender, as a backline rim protector. Jaren is still awesome, but just you lose some of the higher impact of these other guys because of his limitations.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Jerem was also my number 10. I think you have to get him on the list. You have to give him credit for the fact that he is such a game changer on the back line. The ranginess to get from the paint to the 3-point line and vice versa, like just covers so much ground as a free safety. Monster shot blocker, insane timing. He's got this crazy like 7'4" wingspan, I think, but moves kind of like a big wing. Like you said, very switchable, so you can do a lot of things with him. You can use him on wings if you really need to. Again, he's kind of like an upgraded Jonathan Isaac to me in that he does all these things, but like when you put him at the 5 or when you pull him into the primary action, he just isn't as effective as the other guys on the list. Like I think he's of my top 10 personally, and I think it sounds like we have the same. Or no, you have Walker Kessler in your top 10. Of the guys in my top, you said you had Walker Kessler in your top 10, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's the guy that I don't have.
So I have a guy that you don't have at all, and I think I know who it is. Wait, no. He might not have actually even played 41 games. I didn't even do the injury omissions. I might just
by
have
the way,
like,
major injury omission, no Chet, by the way, guys.
Yeah, so we should actually get into that now because I need to check if this guy played 41 games. If not, I need to change my list. He did not. Wow. Okay, I had Mitchell Robinson on my list. I did not know he only played 17 games. So scratch that completely. Okay, I need to fix this. So yes, injury omissions. Let's
really
do
quick. I would probably have Mitchell Robinson 8.
I had him 8th too. I did have him 8th. So bad podcasting on my part. I had Mitchell Robinson 8th. He's an omission. And we forgot to mention that there is a 41 game rule. And we almost broke the rule for Chet because of the full playoff run, but I wanted to keep it consistent with the rest of the series. So Chet Holmgren will not be on this list. Joel Embiid will not be on this list. Robert Williams III will not be on this list, and Mitchell Robinson will not be on this list. Those are like the 4 big injury omissions. So let me go back a sec. Jared Allen is now my number 10, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is my number 9. L podcasting, I apologize. I hope you guys can all forgive me. And I hope you guys can forgive me for that fatal mistake. I wouldn't be surprised if you just click off the episode right now. Going back to Jaren Jackson Jr., though, I think of my top 10, and now we can include Jared Allen in this, the only one who I don't trust to play the 5 full time. If he was the 5 of my, there's another guy we're gonna get to who's like he's not always the 5 because of his size, but like I still trust him to play the 5 if we have a good defensive team. Jaren Jackson Jr. I never feel good about at the 5. And it's because of the fact that he is just such a weak rebounder. And I think everyone started to come around on this in the USA run when he was the full-time 5. And it was just so obvious that he was getting just physically overwhelmed by all of the Euro bigs. Not a great post defender, not a great rebounder, not a great drop big. Kind of just like a big wing. And it requires a certain type of roster construction. Now, with that said, you got your big like Zach Edey, or you got Brandon Clark on the court, or you've got a drop big, or even a switch big. And you can keep, let me put it this way. If you had OKC's roster and Jaren Jackson was your 5 and you just like pre-switched everything to keep him on the baseline, he's going to give you top 5 level impact. He's just a monster impact defender behind the play. But I think specifically on most roster builds, he's one of those guys who does lose a lot more value in the playoffs in comparison to what he's capable of doing as a floor raiser in the regular season.
So you have your 10 and your 9 revealed. Really quickly, I do want to ask you, where would Chet be at if he was eligible for you?
So we've talked about this a little bit before. I'm not as high on Chet.
I think
it's not that I'm low on Chet. I just think general consensus is higher on him than I am. I think it's pretty unanimously agreed upon that he's like a top tier drop defender. I just think he's really, really good. I don't think he's in that top tier. He has some of the like similar issues to some of these other guys where like skinnier frame, more prone to physicality, not super elite on the glass. But then just this monster shot blocker, monster rim protector, can switch a little bit, not super switchable. To me, I think Chet, if I did end up putting him on my list, I think he would have been my number 7.
Okay.
But like
so
I feel better about 5. Like he would have been your 5. Okay, and I know a lot of people that have him like 2 or 3 or even 1. And I'm not mad at it. I get it. Like I see the vision with Chet. I do have more questions about like how much of his perfection on defense in the playoffs is because OKC's defense as a team is perfection. It's kind of like I don't want to penalize him for that, but I also don't want to give him a boost and be like he can do everything because like he did have a lower defensive load than anyone we're going to talk about. But I think like I could see the argument for him as high as 5. I personally, based on what I value, could not get him to 4th, but I also can't really see him much lower than 7. Like, I feel like he's pretty firm in that, like, 5 to 7, maybe 5 to 8 range for me. But he would have been a lock for the list for sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to my number 9. And so number 10 for you is Jared Allen and Jaren Jackson Jr. Number 9 is where we get to Walker Kessler for me.
Yep.
If you want to talk about loads to deal with defensively, I mean, name one perfectly average defensive player on that team. I mean, John Collins was fine-ish last season for him defensively. Their second best impact rotation player defensively. Okay, their second best defender snapped his 3 games into the year. And then, I mean, what is it, KJ Martin? Like, that roster's just not talented at all defensively. I mean, you're hoping it'll be a little bit more talented this year due to the fact that, okay, in theory, you're getting Taylor Hendricks back. Ace Bailey, I think, should be fine defensively entering the league as kind of a bigger wing. The thing with Walker Kessler that I do wonder about heading into a playoff series is some of the versatility he provides for him defensively. I do wonder about that as a legitimate question mark. But elite rebounder, elite drop big, crazy shot blocker out of anybody on my list that or anybody in my top 10 or even top 11. Second on my list in blocks per 75 possession and nearly 3 blocks per 75 possessions. Just a stupid shot blocker. Good in the post. Really good rebounder. I mean, there isn't that many questions I have about Walker Kessler, honestly. I just think he's a monster shot blocker, monster drop big. And, I mean, put him on literally any other surrounding situation. And I think you're getting a guy that would get more praise as a big. I think he's decently underrated. I think maybe NCs that would have said he's firmly underrated. Maybe it's the Laker talk kind of swaying me a little bit more to just saying, okay, he's just underrated. But he's awesome, and I felt like I had to get him on my list because of surrounding situation being god-awful and him having legitimate impact as the 5 for that team.
Yeah, arguably the only positive defender on Utah, and had them at least look competent for some stretches. I think they ended up with the number 30 defense, so I don't want to say they were a competent defense. But when Walker Kessler was on the court, there was some level of resistance in the pick and roll. If he was on the back line, you'd get that added level of rim protection. My question with Kessler is what it would look like in the playoffs. I think I don't really know what to what do you make? And I'll just ask it because you're obviously a little bit higher on Kessler. He ended up as my number 11 after getting rid of Mitchell Robinson. What do you make of Walker Kessler's schematic versatility? Do you think he can switch? Do you think he can execute a hedge or a blitz or whatnot? What do you make of his hands? What do you make of the other stuff? The more versatile stuff?
So I do wonder. And I think this is just the outcome of Utah being in an awful situation over the past couple of years, just in terms of roster talent. I do think he's athletic enough to at least do some hedging and provide some versatility there, because I'm thinking in a world where Utah has their full roster and he's able to hedge, and it's Taylor Hendricks on the back line. Because I do think he is mobile enough to do some of those things with the requisite backline help, but they've been so deprived of defensive talent that they just basically had to stick to him as being a drop big. And only thing I'm going to say is the 1 year, or honestly, even if you look at the past couple of seasons, and I am going to use B-Ball Index as a reference point here, his 2 best seasons in his career as a help defender are probably the best year of Lauri Markkanen as a defender, and B, Taylor Hendricks' rookie year, where Taylor Hendricks was legitimately a positive defensive player for them. So I do wonder, in a situation where, okay, we're in a playoff setting, we have lengthy defensive wings in the back end, do we see them go to that more? I'm not saying that I'm fully comfortable with him switching. I think if you absolutely have to, okay, fine. But it's not a Brook Lopez where, hey, you're dead on arrival on a Walker Kessler switch, but I would definitely prefer to just keep him in drop or maybe hedge if we have the lengthy wings of the back line. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, that's totally what I was looking for. And also, like, it's worth noting that 2023, Walker Kessler's rookie season, the Jazz, if you remember, they started the season trying to win, and they were a legitimately good team for like 20 games. And then they started deliberately tanking. And during the stretch where they were trying to win, Kessler analytically was so good defensively that people were saying they just traded Rudy Gobert for Rudy Gobert and a bunch of draft picks. Like, that was like a talking point. B, it was a Jazz beat writer. He voted for Walker Kessler for Rookie of the Year because of the analytics, and I think it was the only non-Paolo vote. So Walker Kessler actually like got rid of unanimous Paolo Banchero as the Rookie of the Year, specifically because of the defensive analytics.
It's gonna be a trivia question in like 10 years. It's gonna be a trivia question.
Who got the other Rookie of the Year vote? No, but Kessler's awesome. I think the only reason I prefer both Allen and Jaren Jackson marginally, a little bit more rangier, just a little bit more rangier athletes. I'll give you a little bit more
for sure
coverage as a help defender, maybe a little bit more versatility than Kessler. But I agree with everything you said. He's a monster rim protector. He did show specifically
defense too.
The post defense, you did bring up the post defense. Yes, he's easily the post. You think he's a better post defender than Jared Allen?
I think they're about neutral. I'm
both,
maybe Lee Walker.
I mean, they're
Kessler.
both clearly better post defenders than Jaren.
Yes.
That's
not close.
up for debate. Okay, let's move on to number 8. My number 8 was Giannis. And
my number 8 was also Giannis.
Giannis, I think, is one of the toughest players to evaluate because he's the opposite of what I talked about, where it's like, I talked about some players can anchor a defense in regular season, have this crazy value, but then the playoffs come around and you can poke holes at their limitations. Whereas Giannis is like, in the regular season, I'm going to take some games off. I'm going to coast. I'm going to get like my rim protection every now and then. Like, I'll make some plays from the back line here and there, but I'm not super intentional with what I'm doing. But then you get these moments like the play-in. Not the play-in, sorry, the in-season tournament, where for those 2 games to end the in-season tournament, he looked like the best defender on the planet. And it's like, okay, he can still turn up. And when he turns up, it's like, I'm a monster rebounder. I'm a monster rim protector. I can do all the coverages. Like, I actually think Giannis at this point is underrated in what he can do at the 5. Like, as a drop big, he's good. He can hedge. There are, like, a couple hangbacks I have with Giannis. So peak Giannis for me maybe would be number 1 in this list. Would be, like, in that inner circle of top, like, strong discussion for number 1. I think, the motor slipping is definitely, like, a worthy thing to point to. Like, I do think even in the playoffs, the play-to-play consistency isn't what it was 3 years ago. So I do think that, and one of his superpowers back then was the motor. It was the fact that he was just always in the right spot at the right time, always active, always making plays. The other thing that I think kind of gets overshadowed with Giannis, or maybe just not talked about, is the fact that he isn't nearly as switchable as he used to be. Like, when he gets put on the ball in space against quick guards, it's a blow-by. Almost every time at this point.
Tyrese Halliburton.
Tyrese Halliburton was hunting for him. And some of that is the fact that the Bucks didn't have help behind him. Like, I will make note of the fact that Giannis is another one of these guys that carried an insane defensive load, especially when the playoffs roll around. And spoiler, Brook Lopez is the guy you were talking about, and he can't defend in the playoffs because of a lack of foot speed, specifically against the Pacers. Giannis was getting blown by pretty much every single time he got switched onto the ball. I mean, that was the play that Halliburton ended the series on. It was a Giannis switch and then a blow-by for a layup. Just doesn't have the same type of hip mobility or fluidity that he used to have. Not quite as quick laterally. Doesn't make as many insane recoveries after getting beat, because it used to be, okay, maybe I'll get beat sometimes, but here's my length and athleticism. I'm going to pin this off the glass. You just don't see that anymore. So I do think Giannis has regressed quite a bit as a defender from where he was at 3 years ago. That said, still incredibly versatile defensive big, can play the 4 or the 5, can match up with wings if you need him to, and really just this monster presence around the basket.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you hit on that I'm going to kind of piggyback off of is the fact that he doesn't get enough credit for, like, his coverage versatility as a 5. Because he's legitimately, the idea of Giannis defensively is legitimately a Hall of Fame caliber defender by himself. Especially if you talk about peak Giannis, where, okay, you can't legitimately switch 1 through 5. You are good in drop. You are versatile enough to hedge and recover and do some things coverage-wise, while also being one of the most dynamic and just stupid freak athletic free safeties the game has ever seen, while also being like technically solid too. Like I had a take a while ago, and it is, I think these two plays are so easy to kind of cross compare, because they happen historic moments in the finals to kind of remember the series off of. Obviously, you have the LeBron play, right, which the LeBron chase down is just insane. Maybe because of the stakes, it's neither team has scored in like 3 minutes or whatever. The recovery, okay, cool. Maybe the greatest defensive moment wherever in the finals, right? The Giannis one is the more technically like perfect moment in terms of
it's got to be the most
ridiculous.
It's got to be the most difficult defensive play ever made. Like that block, like everything from the positioning to make Booker want to make that pass instead of pulling up,
and then the
hip mobility,
recovery,
the hip mobility to turn and then explode off of 1 foot, get up to that level of height. Like you have to have every single physical trait.
And the hand-eye coordination to track the ball mid-jump and perfectly block in, no foul, no nothing, to put the game. Is that game 6 or game 5?
Game 5. That's game 5.
Yeah.
And watching that live, dude, like I knew immediately that I just witnessed one of the best plays ever. Like as soon as that happened, I was like, what just happened?
In shock.
Yeah, then they showed the replay, and I was like, okay, it's even crazier than I thought. Now, like 4 years later,
so beautiful.
Yeah, 4 years later, you go back, and it's even crazier than you remember it, because everything had to be literally done to perfection with that timing. And then it's not like he blocked some like weak attempt. DeAndre Ayton was well above the rim coming down. Like that block's insane. Absolutely insane.
For almost every other player ever, that's a dunk. Like you're getting dunked on in that situation.
How many players, let me ask you this, how many players in NBA history off the top are you 100% confident can make that play Giannis made?
I don't know. The first one that came to my mind was actually like peak AD. That's the first one that came to my mind.
I think like the guys you have to consider are like AD, KG, and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah.
My question is Wemby, because just off of sheer length, like Wemby probably could.
That's almost like unfair though. That's why I didn't say Wemby.
Though. It wouldn't look like it looked with Giannis.
It wouldn't be as like technically refined.
Right. It would just be like, oh, there's a dunk. Oh, here comes this long arm from the free throw line. So,
it goes this 7'11" wingspan.
Yeah. But point being, not just any player can make the play Giannis made in that finals.
Yeah. And then honestly, like all the things you kind of talked about, I think are the biggest drawbacks on current version of Giannis. I think whether you want to call it motor or just some athletic regression, I think it's kind of a combination of both. Yeah. And, okay, God forbid he athletically regresses from being a Hall of Fame level defender to being still legitimately the anchor of their defense, whether it's him as the forward at the back line. And I think at the very least, I'm a little bit lower on Milwaukee than I know you are. And I kind of came around them a little bit. I am more excited to see him and Miles Turner defensively together than what we've gotten in years past.
I think in that combination, Giannis is going to be like the 5 defensively. I think they're going to try to keep Turner on the back line. I think Giannis is going to be the guy in the action. Because I do think, like, when you compare Turner and Lopez, Turner's a lot more mobile, a lot more vertical, but Lopez is, like, just clearly the better drop defender. And I do think, like, specifically Turner kind of being a weaker drop defender makes it so you want to have like, I do think Giannis is the better pick and roll defender. So I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis is more of a 5 defensively this season, and maybe that's good for him. Maybe with some of the athletic regression you just talked about, maybe he's better at the 5, and maybe his analytics start to uptick again this year. Who knows? But let me say, I'm not high on Milwaukee defensively. I'm high on them because Giannis balling than a bunch of shooters. that's why I'm high on them.
No. I didn't say you were high on them defensively.
Good, but also like maybe I don't know if you were getting at this point, but I kind of want to like predict where you were going. Offensive load compared to the rest of these guys is crazy.
Yeah.
So like maybe some of the motor stuff is the fact that like Giannis is a top 7 offensive player on the planet. I think we both had him like top 6. Nobody else on this list is even close to Giannis offensively. So like maybe if Giannis didn't have to score 20 points a game, like what if he was like an 18 point per game scorer?
Have to score 30?
Well, I'm just saying, like, what if, like, we just talked about Walker Kessler. What did Walker Kessler average last year? 11 points. What if Giannis?
12.
What if Giannis averaged 12 points a game? What would we be talking about him defense? You know what I mean? That's my question.
Yeah. Going to our number 7s, there is a decent tier gap for me. If you wanted to have Giannis, maybe not decent. I think Giannis would probably fall in this category. But I did feel really good about my 7. And Giannis being the guy that could jump in there.
Okay, so my 7, I actually have in like closer to this 8 through 10 group. I think my jump is from 7 to 6.
Okay.
My big jump. So is your 7 Zoo? That's my 7.
Zoo is also my 7.
Zoo. So Visa Zubats is my 7. Why are you higher on Zoo then?
No, I just think it's more like Giannis, Zoo 6, and then
So
I
you're
think it's Giannis.
So you're lower on the 6 than I am probably.
Probably.
Because I think 6 is like up there with 5, maybe 4. So, okay, let's talk about Zoo for a sec then. So, what do you... I mean, Zoo... I feel like Zoo's the pretty self-explanatory defender, right? Like, monster drop big, monster rebounder. Do you think he's the best defensive rebounder in the league right now?
Probably?
Him...
He has
Jokic,
an argument.
Him, Jokic, Gobert kind of feels like the big 3. I mean, I think Zoo's a better rebounder than Gobert, flat out. I think it's between probably Zoo, Sabonis. I think it's between Zoo, Jokic, and Sabonis probably. Something about them big body bigs, huh? Like they're just always boxing out, dude. They love a good box out. Zoo to me is so special because the Clippers did not have a secondary rim protector and they did not have another rebounder. So for him to do what he did as the anchor of that defense and then also like look. I do think he was a little bit less effective in the playoffs, and that some of that is just his matchup with Jokic. You can't do the same type of things as a drop defender, as a rim protector. When he was spaced to the 3-point line, you could see the Clippers defense kind of fall apart. But yeah, Zoo it's like he's a master of all of the traditional big things, but then he's also not like this lackluster foot speed guy. He can kind of move. He can kind of cover ground.
Yeah, no, I think the Zoo conversation is pretty self-explanatory, and to that point about Zoo kind of being the lone primary rim protector and lone defensive rebounder, he's doing that and essentially anchoring the third best regular season defense and the best defensive rebounding team in the league based off defensive rebound percentage. Like that's the Ivica Zubac effect. I mean, he's also really, really good. He's such a good post defender that I feel like going into that Denver series, we were getting think pieces about how Zubac was the Jokic post up stopper.
And he did great on Jokic in that series too. Like he lived up to that name, I think.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest reason why I guess I didn't have him higher than 7 is because I think there are better shot blockers and rim protectors, and I just don't think he has as much versatility as some of the other guys. But he's still awesome, and that's why I personally think that he's a part of my middle tier. And I think I would prefer Zubac over Kessler. I'm not even thinking about it. Which for you, like it's a no dub. I had Kessler on my list. So that's why there is
I got you.
A slight tier gap for me. But Zubac is awesome.
I think so. My top 6, I think, are all like my top 6. I feel good. I'm like, you can execute every scheme under the sun and be okay. At least Zoo to me is just in that notch below where it's like the guys I already talked about. Zoo is clearly a better primary rim protector and primary action defender than these guys. Like I think Zoo in the pick and roll is a better defender than Giannis, Jaren, and Jared Allen. I think he's a better rebounder than all of them. I think he's a better primary rim protector than all of them. But he the only thing holding him back from like tier jumping these guys to me is the fact that he probably is the least scheme versatile of that group, and then just clearly less scheme versatile than my top 6. And that's why my top 6 is kind of like its own group where it's like all of these guys are well, one of them I'm not too high on as a rim protector, but he can do literally everything else at a super high level. And then the rest of them are like, yeah, I can protect the rim. Yeah, I can switch. Yeah, I can execute every scheme. And we'll be good. So that's my only hangback with Zoo. I just don't know how much else he can do.
All right. Let's get into your tier 1. And this guy, I think it's very arguable to be in tier 1. I just have him right outside. So who's your number 6?
My number 6 is Bam Adebayo.
Okay, also my number 6.
We're just making the same list. Shocker. Big shocker here, guys. If you're new to the show, we just always have the same list somehow after not even talking about it.
I have not changed it either. My list is all right here.
Yeah, there we go. So Bam to me is the guy. He was the guy I was talking about when I said I'm not too high on him as a rim protector. He's actually the only guy in this list by a landslide, actually. Over the last 2 seasons, players shoot better than their expected field goal percentage at the rim with Bam contesting.
Yeah.
There's not a big vertical presence, not super great positionally around the rim. I do think he's improved a lot as a drop defender over the years. Like, he's actually a solid drop. He used to be kind of weak in drop. I think he's solid now. Underrated team impact rebounder. He's not going to go out and give you like 14 or 15 rebounds a game, but there's a very consistent signal, especially in the playoffs, where like his teams rebound extremely well defensively when he's on the court. And I think that's because you watch he's always finding a body. Like, he might not be the guy always grabbing the rebound, but he's always boxing somebody out. So I do think he makes an impact in that way. But then it's the schematic versatility, man. We talked about this a little bit off camera, but Bam having a higher offensive load, and then also not being this monster rim protector, you don't get the same type of impact signal in the regular season. Like, if you were to compare numbers versus numbers in the regular season, every single metric would tell you Zoo's a much better defender than Bam. Bam's money's made in the playoffs. It's like, we're going to go into the playoffs with Miami. Eric Spoelstra is going to do everything because he's a mad scientist of a coach. And Bam gives him the flexibility to do literally everything because he's a legit 1-5 defender. He can do all of the coverages in pick and roll. He can play the 4 or the 5 defensively. He can play the 2 defensively if you really need him to. And that's the selling point with Bam. When you get deep in the playoffs, when you get to the conference finals, when you get to the finals, you are not limited in any way at all if Bam's on the court, and I think that's just so valuable.
I think a sneaky underrated part about Bam is, too, he does a decent job of staying out of foul trouble. Only committed 2.29 fouls, 2.3 fouls per 75 possessions. Like, for a guy that is required to do so much for that team defensively, that's, like, commendable and impressive. How little he gets into foul trouble for that team. Super, super rangy and just active in the passing lanes. And I think they've bounced on. I'm glad they were able to lean into, at least in the second half of the season, the looks with him defensively with Khalil Ware. Wait, it's Khalil. It's not Khalil. Yep, Khalil Ware. Because I do think the difference between him and Jaren is where Bam is awesome. They're both awesome as like backline defenders, being able to be rangy, whether it's in the passing lanes or even guarding on the perimeter. Well, one, Bam's just better switching out than Jaren is. But more importantly is that when the situation calls for it, Bam is more than capable of being still an elite 5, man. You just lose some of the rim protection because he isn't a great rim protector. That's easily the drawback on Bam. But he's still very, very good at being a 5 because of his activity, because of his length and his range that he provides for you defensively. And to your point, actually, about the rebounding, I do think it's somewhat interesting that if you look at everybody in my top 6, or our top 6, I guess at this point is worth to say, that, okay, even though Bam, again, isn't the guy that's going to rack up 10-plus defensive rebounds per game, he's actually second on the list if you're just purely looking at adjusted defensive rebounding success rate, which I think kind of goes somewhat to your point about how, look, in terms of what Bam provides for an overall team defense and the team's defensive rebounding, he's still actually, even though the box score, okay, how many rebounds are you actually getting numbers might not be as high, when it's time to go get a big-time defensive rebound, Bam still, in terms of the collective team impact, is one of the better team defensive rebounders in the league, which, combine that with the range, the athleticism, the scheme versatility, I mean, Spo's a mad scientist, and he'll figure it out regardless. But can you imagine some of these playoff series in the past on these deeper Miami playoff runs with Zubac as their 5, for example, compared to Bam as their 5? He just opens up so much. That's how you get the Jaylen Brown block in game 1 or whatever of that bubble Easter Cup, maybe even game 2 of that Eastern Conference Finals bubble run or some of the other switching out moments that he's had in these playoff runs is so vital for this team's defense. And Bam's awesome. And yeah, the impact is down compared to years past. Easily the most responsibility he's ever had offensively. And for half the season, they had no defensive talent.
Yeah.
It was Bam.
I think one selling point with Bam, too, is he's the only guy. I think he actually might be the only. No, I'll say Wemby, too, and Draymond. Wemby and Draymond, and then Bam are the only three guys on my list that I think are going to make a big positive impact regardless of where they're at on the court or how the offense is set up, no matter what. Like, if you get Bam at the nail, he's stunting, he's making plays with his length, he's reaching into the driving lanes, he's shutting off. Like, especially in those Boston series, they'd try to get him on the wing, and then Tatum and Brown couldn't get to the rim because Bam's always stunting. And I guess that's, to that point, while he might not be the level of rim protector or shot alterer that Jaren Jackson Jr. is, I do think Bam's rim deterrence is really, really good. Like, when he's on the court, teams aren't getting to the rim like they are against a lot of these other guys who are maybe like late help, I'm going to block a shot. So I do think Bam kind of almost checks every box. It's just the fact that the five guys I have ahead of him are just all way, way more effective at the rim. That's really the only difference.
All right. Okay, so let me actually just move on to our top five. How tough was it for you getting 1 through 5?
Actually, I think I should just go to my number 5 first, because my 5 and 6 was like flipped back and forth a couple times. So I kind of want to do this conversation real quick before I get to that, like ordering the top guys. My number 5 was Evan Mobley, and I was kind of back and forth with Mobley and Bam. And I'll tell you why. I think when you think about it from a perspective of checking boxes, a lot of people will say, well, Mobley can switch like Bam, but then he's also a great rim protector. And I think that's true. I think Bam's a little bit more switchable, but Mobley is a monster switch defender. Like, there are Boston games where he's the primary defender on Jaylen Brown and legitimately stopping drives. And like, he can really, really defend wings. I think there are a couple differences between Bam and Mobley that are advantages in Bam's favor that kind of get overlooked. One is the strength. Bam's a lot stronger than Mobley. I think he's better in the post. I think he's better at stonewalling drives. Mobley kind of relies more on the length and verticality aspect of things. I also think Bam is just flat out a better in-action defender than Mobley. I think one of the things that gets overlooked with like Mobley and Allen as a tandem is that Mobley isn't an elite drop defender, and Allen is noticeably better in drop than Mobley. So when Mobley's the lone 5, yes, he can still anchor the defensive unit because of his switchability, because of his rim protection. But I do think Bam's a little bit better and a little bit more versatile in the primary action against pick and roll. Now, with that said, take it back a step. Mobley can still do pretty much everything on defense. He's super versatile, and he's a monster rim protector. And when I was splitting hairs, I was like, Bam, sure, maybe a little bit better in the action, maybe a little bit more scheme versatile. But if Mobley's my low man, I feel really good. If Mobley's my 5, I feel really good. If Mobley's my primary defender on your 3, I feel really good. And I just think that monster rim protection is the one thing that I was like, I got to give the nod to Mobley here.
Yeah, I think the reason why Mobley's 5 and not much higher is kind of what you were saying, but I guess I'll just maybe more clearly state it. I think Mobley, to unlock the ultra, high-level impact that you get from Evan Mobley to the point where he's able to have a defensive player caliber a year, to unlock that, you need him to be your 4. And that's just okay, you either need that or you need to have somebody that can do the extra stuff for him, which is basically the same thing. You need the in-action defender, kind of like you were saying, because that's where you get the over a 82-game, 48-minute, and then hopefully 16-win playoff sample, rather, to get that high-level impact. Because him as a 5 over that same time period, he would still be on the list. He would still be top 10 because he can still legitimately switch and guard wings at a high level. He is still a legitimately great rim protector. You just lose some of the extra stuff because now you're having him guard in the action, kind of like you were saying. And over a full season plus a playoff sample size of him doing that, he would still be on the list, like I said, but he would be probably 9 or 8 or whatever. Probably 9, because I think I would probably have Giannis over him at that point. But because he's able to be the 4, because he's able to play next to Jared, and maybe this is a a Jarrett Allen bump too. You had him in your top 10, so maybe this is a slight bump to Jarrett Allen because Jarrett Allen allows Evan Mobley to be this rangy backline defender, be this switchy 1 through 5 defender, or 3 through 5, 2 through 5, whatever. Be this rangy switch defender, be this backline shot blocker, and then, oh crap, okay, for an 8-minute sample size, we have to play you at the 5. Okay, cool, this works. I think Evan Mobley, to go back to my question before you led it to your number 5, Evan Mobley was a pretty comfortable 5. I didn't really consider any of my 1 through 4 to be at 5, if that makes sense.
I agree. Yeah, that's how I was. For me, Mobley was like 5 or 6. Like, I could hear out an argument for him to be 4th, but I'm not like, based on what I value, Mobley to me like would be in the group that I talked about with Chet. That 5 to 7. And another thing with Mobley too is I wonder how much of like the lack. I don't want to say lack of ability to play the 5 because Cleveland's defensive numbers are amazing when he's at the 5. My question is, how much of that has to do with the fact that Cleveland doesn't really have the defensive personnel you'd want with Mobley at the 5? Like,
sure.
What if Mobley was Boston's 5?
Are you the OKC except? Okay, you went
no Boston. Like 2024. What if Mobley replaced Horford and then Mobley can just switch everything? Like now we might be talking about Mobley as like 2nd or 3rd. So that's what makes it really tough. And I kind of feel like that's a happy medium, like 5th. I think Mobley, monster defender, super versatile. I just trust the other 4 guys ahead of him a little bit more as my primary action defender. Speaking of which, let's get to number 4. Maybe, actually,
wait. 5 through 10 first.
5 through 10. That's such a great call. And I want to get back to your question too. What was your question? Say it again. You had a question for me.
So let's just do it 4 through 1 now, since we have the same top 4. How hard was it for you to order 1 through 4?
I ended up pretty comfortably placing my number 4 at number 4. And we'll have that discussion in a sec. My number 4, I was like, okay, he's probably number 4. Remember, I do seasonal evaluations, and going into this, my 1 through 3 all had the exact same defensive valuation. So I was like, shoot, okay, now I have to find a way to try and separate these guys. So 1 through 3,
I think I know who your 4 is.
You do. I think you do. But my 1 through 3 was kind of like flipping a coin. I eventually like dove into it, and I felt a little bit more comfortable about my number 1 than I did a couple weeks ago. My 2 and 3 is like I had no separation at all. 2 and 3 is like back and forth. But 1 and 4 kind of separated themselves a tiny bit by the time I was able to finalize it. What about you? I feel like your 1 through 4 is like the same.
You think my 1 through 4 is the same?
No, I'm saying like all of them are the same in your head, and it's like you had to split hairs.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
no, they're. I hate my 1 through 4.
Yeah, no, this is gonna be. It's gonna be funny because it's inevitable that we're gonna have the same 1 through 4, and we're both gonna like feel good about it after agreeing, because that just seems to always happen. But let's go ahead and do our 10 through 5. Good call on that. High level editing going on here as well, per usual. My 10 through 5 is 10 Jarrett Allen, 9 Jaren Jackson Jr., 8 Giannis, 7 Zubats, 6 Bam, and 5 Evan Mobley.
Well, if I wanted to be a bad podcaster, I would just say listen to Tyler's 10 through 5 because it's almost the exact same. My 10 is Jaren Jackson Jr., my 9 is Walker Kessler, my 8 is Giannis Antetokounmpo, my 7 is Ivica Zubac, my 6 is Bam Adebayo, my 5 is Evan Mobley.
You know what would be the funniest thing ever? Like would just be objectively hilarious? We've agreed on almost every single list. Like, we've had basically the same ranges for every single list, from scorers, playmakers, offensive players, to defenders at each position. What if our top 25s are just nothing alike at all? What if you have got, like, I'm like, I didn't even have him in my top 50. It's like,
Austin Reeves at 17. You heard it here first.
It's like, Sean, this is not consistent with what you've been talking about. Okay, let's get into the top 4. My number 4 is Anthony Davis.
I knew that was your 4. And I know what the drawback's going to be, too.
So, I can confidently say Anthony Davis is the best in-action defender in the league. I don't even know if that's really up for debate. Drop, switch, hedge, elite hands. You get him on the back line. Also, probably like the third. Looking at my list, I think Anthony Davis is the 3rd best rim protector in the league. Yeah. That feels right. Specifically in the playoffs. Like, let me emphasize, Anthony Davis in the regular season is way different from Anthony Davis in the playoffs. He just locks in. And I think maybe that's why I felt confident with him at 4. We didn't get the playoff run this year. Whereas like 2023 Anthony Davis to me would be clearly number 1 in this list. Like 2023 AD was a freak. My hangbacks with AD, I got 3 of them. 1,
Okay.
and maybe this isn't fair because we're doing like this is a healthy list, but I don't know if he can. No, but it's like it's the defensive load in relation to the injury history. Like how can he really carry a defensive load for 82 games? I don't think so. Or even like a full playoff run, it feels like it's difficult for him at this point to carry a serious defensive load and then stay fully healthy.
Okay.
2,
I'm gonna come back to that, but go ahead.
2, same kind of thing. The motor is such a question mark with him all the time. Like specifically, again, going back to 2023, the motor wasn't a question and he was the number 1 defender. I think even in the regular season in 2023, he was a lot more dialed in than he was last year and then especially this year. This year with JJ Redick, he had more of an offensive load, was like used as a ball handler more and played a lot more downhill. But then defensively, it just felt like he was not the same caliber of defender. And I think some of that is the motor, some of it is the age, some of it is the carrying more of an offensive load. My third and final point, and you know exactly what it is, Anthony Davis is the worst transition defender in the league.
Like, now, pause you right there. I would argue that that's the exact same conversation as the motor.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I would argue so. I just kind of bunch those two together.
That's fair. But yeah, I needed to at least highlight it because transition offense is the most efficient form of offense, and he does not get back. And so if I'm splitting hairs between like half-court defender, give me 80 at number 1, I won't even be mad at it. But specifically when you have to split the hairs between these caliber of defenders, and this guy I just know is not going to get back like 15 times a game, I'm sorry, you can't be my number 1 anymore. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to respond to the first part. I do not have 84. I'm going to respond to the first part really quickly about the like health / ability to anchor a defense over 82 game sample. Only thing I'm going to add, if we're going to have this conversation with AD, then sneakily got to have this conversation about Draymond, who has played 65 games since 2020 twice, which would be 2023, the year they made it to the playoffs, lost the Lakers in round 2, and then this year we played 68 games.
Fair.
And that's partially help, that's partially Draymond being an idiot.
So this is, if you're new to the podcast, this is Sean trying to catch me in a pickle because he knows how I feel about Draymond Green. he's trying to do me dirty right now.
No, well, actually, what's funny is I know, like, that would apply for Draymond and Rudy. And if I say anything about Rudy, it's just going to be, 27 and 24. So I'm just going to not do that. I'm going to save myself the heartache and keep it pushing.
So do you want to get to your number 4 then? Or do you want to make more points about AD?
No, because I'm going to circle back around to AD. My number 4 is Rudy Gobert. And I hated it. And I honestly hate my entire 1 through 4, but I felt more comfortable. Like for me, I know you said there's a separator for you for like at least 1 kind of separates from the pack for you, 4 kind of separates itself slightly. For me, it was like I think they're kind of like bunched up and grouped together pretty closely for me. And to a certain extent, it's kind of more like personal preference in a way. Like I think there's something a little bit more unique about each of them. I think Rudy Gobert, one of the biggest things, we talked about this during the regular season with Rudy, was, okay, there is a slight dip in regular season impact. Okay, like your impact overall for the Timberwolves defensively wasn't as felt as the past couple of seasons. And then in the playoffs, it was, oh, okay, cool. You're still Rudy Gobert. If Anthony Davis is the best in-action defender in the league, then Rudy Gobert is, to be even more specific, I think it's the best. Because no, I think AD almost still applies. If you eliminate Anthony Davis from the conversation, I think Rudy Gobert is arguably just the best drop big in the entire league. And best rim protector in the league, not named Victor Wembanyama, because he's 7'4" with a 7'11" wingspan. So, and while also just having, and this is me making the argument against AD here for a quick second, while still being able to have a good motor, play well in transition, be a good post defender. Like, honestly, I guess the biggest drawback on Rudy Gobert would just be the fact that he isn't the most he isn't the most versatile compared to some of these other guys. Actually, easily the least versatile defensive player compared to our other three guys.
You think he's more versatile than Wemby, or less versatile than Wemby?
I think they're about the same, with the advantage going to Wemby. Personally,
I think. So Rudy's my number 3, so I'm not like too much different on you or from you with him. I think Rudy is like at this point, and it won't always be like this, but I think Rudy at this point is just like very obviously way better on switches than Wemby, like on the perimeter. And I think it's a balance thing.
And I think like coming out of this year is better.
Wemby having such freakish length and tools makes him like somewhat off balance. Like he looks goofy sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a play specifically when he's guarding James Harden, and he's just like flying at every fake and like looks like he's like flailing his arms everywhere. And I'm like, well, that is effective because he's got an 8-foot wingspan. So like sometimes he's just gonna make a play on the ball, and there's not much you can do. But I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do remember like Wemby on perimeter isolations allowed a really high points per possession, whereas Gobert's always like 0.7, 0.6. And to that point, I'm sorry, and I know this doesn't apply to you, so I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry, if you still think Rudy Gobert can't switch, I really don't know what to tell you. Rudy's obviously not this crazy switch big. He's not AD. He's not Mobley. But, like, Rudy can switch if you need him to switch. I think Rudy's problem is more of, like, the recovery speed and, like, ranginess. It's not, I can't keep the ball in front of me.
He has individual isolation possessions that are good.
Yes.
It's more so, like, go ahead.
For me, it's like, if Rudy's hedging or if Rudy's closing out to the perimeter, there's not much, like, I can get to the rim or the three-point line on a string. It's like, when his momentum is into one action or one play, there's not much else he can do to recover. If that makes sense. Like, the way people have exploited Rudy in the playoffs isn't put him in the action. It's make him close from the paint to the three-point line, or make him have to help. Well, that's like his team's fault. It's not Rudy's fault, but you know what I mean. Like, Rudy in the action, I think he's the second best in-action defender in the league. I think it's 80, and then I think it's Rudy. Like, did so good against the Lakers pick and pop when they went Rui or DFS at the 5. Was just so effective blowing up those actions. If you can pre-switch and keep him on the baseline, like you said, he's the second best rim protector in the league. The most disciplined defender in the league, never fouls, never bites on fakes, just always in the right spot at the right time. Absolute genius defender. But yeah, to your point, I think it's the schematic versatility for me, and the ranginess behind the play and things like that, that to me are the only things keeping him back from being a clear number 1.
I hate this so much.
You're stressing right now.
I just went through a whole midlife crisis mid sentence because I thought about.
What'd you think
about? Your three's Rudy. Your
Yeah.
4's AD, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I guess it's my turn to do my number 3. And this feels so disgusting. My number 3 is Draymond. This feels so disgusting.
That's what I thought it was going to be.
I think we did a pod with Mars. And I can't remember if it was like top 10 defensive players since 2000 or something. And I can't remember where I had Draymond at. I feel like I might have had him.
I know that, like, we all had him top 4. Like, it was like 3 or 4.
Yeah. He might have been like 2 or 3 for me. Well, because then I forgot Kevin Garnett. He might have been 2 for me. I think I was higher.
I think he was 2 for you. I know everyone's top 4 in no order was Duncan, KG, Draymond, and Ben Wallace. I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the orders.
I think Draymond was 2 for me because I think it went KG, Draymond, Duncan, Ben Wallace.
I think Draymond was my 3. My list. I think he was my 3.
So, with that being said, obviously, Hall of Fame level defender, one of the best defensive players, regardless of position of all time, and certainly of the past 2.5 decades or so. I hate the. Sometimes I think the IQ argument can be overstated, but legitimately just a quarterback of their defense. like knows every single action before it's going to happen. So therefore, he's in the right place at the right time every single time, calls out everything, and it elevates, like, outside of him and Jimmy, a pretty fine defensive roster. Like, it's not loaded with defensive talent. It's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, you have, outside of Jimmy, you have GP2, who's nice, and I think you had him in your top 10 or right outside your top 10 for sure.
He was like number 6, I think, for me. Like number 6.
Okay, so
but then
never mind.
To your point, he only plays like 15 minutes a game.
Yeah, so you're getting 15 minutes of a top 10 defensive wing. And then, like, a bunch of dudes are, like, fine defensively.
Yeah.
And it's really Draymond lift in and Jimmy, and then GP2 for 15 minutes is nice. And Steve Kerr has consistently been a good defensive coach. But, like, really Draymond, like, kind of lifting up that defense, and with his free safety and just his ranginess on the back end and his ability to just blow up actions consistently, especially in the playoffs. It just ramps up, and I think that Minnesota series looks a little bit different if they're fully healthy. Because think about it this way. Now you're reallocating Jimmy to a more of a role that makes sense for him offensively, and he now gets to put in more effort defensively. So now you're getting fully locked in Jimmy defensively without having to score 30 to make it competitive, and what Draymond's able to do as well for him defensively. Obviously, he's lost some of the athleticism compared to 2017, for example. Like, you're not going to see Draymond making Damian Lillard full court blocks back-to-back anymore at age 34, which is something I think to note. He is the oldest guy on our list in our top 10s.
Yeah. But
despite the fact, perfect help defender, still getting around 1.3 blocks per 75. Elite post defender. That was the other thing I forgot. For the dude to be 6'7", not trying to make a meme, but for the dude to be 6'7" with the it's like a 7-foot wingspan, doesn't he?
I think he might be like 7'1". Right?
Yeah.
He's got long arms.
He's got long arms, but the strength and just the strength combined with the length just allows him to legitimately play the 5 in a playoff series and be fine with it. Like, he can guard the Senguns, he can guard the Jokic's, or at least be the primary defender in those situations. He's gonna have his lumps. He's gonna take his losses. Sengun got him a couple times in that Rockets series, most notably with the dunk out of the post in whatever game that was in Houston. But the fact that he legitimately is still locked down in the post, still the best free safety in basketball, and like just a genius defensively. I feel disgusting having him 3.
I had him too. And I think there's a very strong argument for number 1, specifically if you isolate the playoffs. It's like, I have any defender in the league for 20 games. Who do I want? Draymond might be my first pick. Here's
if you're building your defense from scratch, it's, for me, Draymond and AD. For a 20-game sample size, it's Draymond, then probably AD.
Well, because they give you so many options. You can do so much from there. Like, with Draymond, specifically with Draymond, it's like, okay, now let's just take whoever we can get because we're going to be able to do whatever. Like, the schematic versatility with Draymond is so unreal, between his ability to play multiple positions, his ability. Here's the thing. Prime Draymond would be the easiest number 1 ever, right? Like, we would both pencil him in at number 1 and never look at that again. We'd start our list at 2. And the thing is, like, because he was so good, he can regress heavily in so many areas and still have an argument for number 1. Like, I think he's noticeably less agile than he was even in 2022. So you get a little bit less switchability. But then it's like, okay, let's stop comparing Draymond to himself and compare him to the rest of the league. What other big on this list besides Mobley and Bam?
Down years for me is career year for others.
Right. It's like Mobley and Bam are both super switchable. Are either of them more switchable than Draymond? It's at least a discussion, right? It's at least a discussion. And then it's like, Draymond lost a lot of verticality, so I think he's less of a rim protector. But then it's like, oh wait, but he's also like the second best positional rim protector in the league, so he can still play the 5 if you really need him to. To me, the bigger thing with Draymond at this point is, like, because of some of those athletic regressions, covers a little bit less ground, a little bit less vertical, a little bit less switchable. And it's like those things coupled with the fact that he's also way smaller than everyone on our list. It's like, if I did need someone to raise a lower level defensive unit in the playoffs, or even just like maximize the ceiling of my defense with this guy at the 5. I do think there are certain offenses that could take advantage of that lack of size, and that's why in Golden State specifically, it's like we need Quentin Post on the court, or we need Kevon Looney on the court, because, or at least for some stretches, because every other guy we've talked about in this like top 4 is very obviously you can be my full-time 5 for 40 minutes a game. I don't know how I feel about that with Draymond. Like, if Draymond was my center for 40 minutes a game, I feel like my team is kind of lacking. Like, we kind of need to reconstruct our roster a little bit. You know, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then it's like, the thing with that is, like, I feel good about AD or Wemby playing the 4. Gobert, not so much. Gobert kind of has to be the 5. But, like, Wemby and AD, it's like, if you're my 4 or my 5, I know you're giving me maximum defensive impact. So I see that argument of it. But with Draymond, you get this insane playoff motor. Also, probably the best transition defender in the league. Is that a hot take? Actually, Thompson twins. Thompson twins are kind of nasty. Among the guys in this list, we'll say Draymond is the best transition defender. Best communicator. Not to like go too high on the hard on the IQ argument, but you mentioned Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr's actually said that Draymond is the one who draws up their defensive game plans. Like, he's the defensive coordinator.
That doesn't surprise me.
It's insane.
I've never seen that clip, but like that does not surprise me.
That guy's he's a genius. What we talk about with Magic Johnson, Steve Nash, LeBron, those guys on offense, that's what Draymond is to defense.
Yes.
So yeah, he's always going to be in this discussion. For me, he was number 2. I just think it's the lack of size, and I think it's also the fact that my number 1 isn't human. But let's get to your number 2 first. Who was your number 2?
So my number 2 is Anthony Davis. I for some of the reasons that were already discussed, I couldn't have him 1. Simply, really, it's just the fact that he's just a bad transition defender compared to the rest of these guys. That's actually the biggest reason why he's not 1. He is the best half-court defender on the planet. I think, and I'm glad you touched on it, because I think everybody knows he's an elite half-court defender and has elite versatility. I think specifically if you look at that Team USA run, I think that kind of helped the AD is really a freak defensively narrative agenda. Like, everybody knew it, but it kind of brought those conversations back up because of that Team USA run last summer. But to that point, because of a bad Lakers defensive roster, basically since, I mean, they were fine. They had the best defensive roster he had post-title would have been like post-trade deadline in 23, where you got the best version of Ando. You got LeBron. LeBron is pretty consistently over the past like few seasons now has upgraded as a defender come playoff time. I think that's like fairly safe to say. One thing I will say about AD as a slight drawback, and he's still like perfectly good at it, I think he is a overrated post defender, 1-on-1. I think he's a little overrated in 1-on-1 post defense. Now there's going to be the follow up argument that says, well, Sean, post defense is really team defense, and sure, but that's why I was pretty specific. Like 1-on-1 post defense, like it's him versus X player on the block, and there's only going to be certain players in the league that can exploit this. But for example, in a 1-on-1 true post up possession, would I rather go AD or Zubac? I'm probably going Zubac
easily.
So that is a slight drawback of AD, but outside of that, man, in terms of just coverage, the best coverage defender in the entire league, can execute any pick and roll coverage, can switch, can hedge, can do it, get elite drop defender, plays the cat and mouse 2-on-1 game. It's literally him and Rudy. Like they play it. Wemby does not count. He is exempt from this conversation. But in terms of like just the technical side of it too, it's literally him and Rudy that plays the drop 2-on-1 game better than anybody else in the league, and it's really not that close. Still a monster shot blocker, still a really, really good rebounder. I'm excited to see him at the 4 this year in Dallas. I'm hopeful that we get to see even more of that, of the coverage and scheme versatility in Dallas with Jay Kidd, who's an elite defensive coach, and with the defensive roster they have down there. But yeah, AD's my 2.
Yeah, there's a point I want to make. This is the part of the show where we can get a little bit theoretical, I guess would be the word. This is really interesting. So one thing we haven't talked about in any of these episodes yet is the relation, like the interaction between offense and defense. And I think it really applies here because going back to AD's transition defense, one of the reasons he's not always able to get back is because A, most of his shots come at the rim, and then B, he falls a lot. So it's like
he falls so much
when he's down there when he's down there battling in the paint and shooting 8 or 9 times at the rim a game and getting above the rim and dunking or trying to draw a foul and falling and then not getting the call. That does hurt his defensive value. Like if you look at a metric, like a plus minus metric, it will pick up on that and be like something's happening where AD isn't impacting the game as much defensively as he should be. And I think I value that. Like that to me, it's all about the impact. So I do think that bleeds into his value a little bit. But like if I was just isolating the defense and didn't consider that, I would be able to have a stronger case for AD at number 1. All that's to say, Wembanyama takes like 10 above the break threes a game. He's always the first guy back in transition. And then you cannot score on him in transition. So you automatically get this boost with Wemby where it's like if he's on the court, there's like 10 possessions a game where he's the first guy back in transition. And that just does so much for the defensive floor of that team. That's one of the reasons why the Spurs, with him on the court, will have like just like a 10-point defensive swing compared to when he's off the court because there's no transition. There's no transition offense when Wemby takes a 3 or when he sets up from above the break or whatever. And then in the half court, well, he covers the entire court. I think, like I said, I think he looks a little bit goofy on switches sometimes. I think he's somewhat off balance a little bit, but then almost always can recover because he's the lengthiest player we've ever seen. Shockingly fluid mover with his hips and things like that for that size. Monster post defender, not because of strength or technique, but because he's so overwhelming. Like, those games against Jokic, those back-to-back Nuggets games, Jokic averaged like 40 over those 2 games. But it was so clear how much harder Jokic had to work to get a shot over Wemby. Like, he had to hit the craziest angles ever just to even get the shot over Wemby's arms. It's so crazy. His timing as a rim protector, he's the best shot blocker since Mutombo? Maybe even before that. Like, Wemby's one of the best shot blockers we've ever seen. Covers so much, super rangy athlete behind the play. And it's crazy to say that, like, of this group of 4, Wemby is very obviously the worst technical defender. But because he's
that's not even close.
Not even close.
And that's what not to cut you off. That's why I was kind of like stressing and going through it. I was like, okay, we could all acknowledge that he's a freak, but like technically he's not good at all.
He's easily the worst technical defender of this group, but he's got the best tools in NBA history. Besides maybe like Kevin Garnett. And it's like the guy is just an absolute freak. He can get out of any situation. So that actually, let's talk about the technicality point for a second, because the only argument I could have for Wemby being as low as like 4th is we haven't yet seen a playoff sample, and playoffs is usually where that stuff gets exploited, right? Like over the course of a regular season, I don't think we'd even be debating Wemby at 1. He just does so much as a rim protector. He does so much as a floor raiser. But in the playoffs specifically, would teams be able to take advantage of his like awkward balance at times or his awkward positioning at times? Like there's a lot of times where he'll get into a pick and roll and then just like only guard the roller and like not guard the ball. But then it's like sometimes he's only guarding the roller, yet still blocks the ball because he just reaches over there. And it's like, how much of that would translate to the playoffs? I don't know. That's the big like question mark with Wemby. I feel confident enough that he's still my number 1, but that would be kind of where I start to get lower potentially.
So I have some, to be quite frank, ridiculous stats I'm going to throw at you for Wemby really quickly, okay? And I apologize if this is going to turn into a ramble. All right, let's start off here. Defensive rebounding percentage on missed 2s, okay? Ready? The Spurs with Wemby off the floor on 66.5% defensive rebounding percentage with Wemby off the floor. By the way, that would be easily dead last in the league this season. And this is, by the way, combining both this year and last season. So they would be the worst defensive rebounding team in the league with Wemby off the floor. With Wemby on the floor, they go from 66.5% to 70.2%. Okay? If we're keeping this purely defense, right? This is where just the fact that he is the best rim deterrent in the entire league comes into play. 2-point field goal percentage, with Wemby off the floor, 56.9%. To Wemby on the floor, 53.6%. Effective field goal percentage, 56.2 without, 54.3% with him on. The three-point rate, honestly, is about the same, but the at-rim shot frequency goes from 32.1% of their shot attempts coming at the rim to 30.8. So he's the best defensive player. He's the best defensive player at doing the most important thing, which is just limiting shots at the rim. It's the most valuable thing in basketball, to add on top of the fact of what you already said, because he shoots so many shots above the break. Or even Jokic kind of falls into this argument because they run so many actions out of delay or the elbow and out. Wemby falls into a similar category to where it's sent because of how his offensive game kind of works. It allows for him to be just the first player back defensively every single time. And in the last one, rim field goal percentage goes from 66.7 to 63.7. This is through his first 2 years in the NBA, and this is with them being the weakest technical defender on the list. It's just what happens when you have a 7'4" behemoth of a human being that has a 7'11" wingspan. And that is why I'm not all that worried about him in the playoffs, because I just think he is such a freak and covers so much ground that I think at the very least for the next 5 or so years, he'll be perfectly fine. Now, if you want to have the argument about longevity slash, like once we get to, okay, let me backpedal and word this a little bit more appropriately. Do I think his defensive game, if he never gets better technically, do I think his defensive game may age as gracefully as Draymond's, for example? I think it's arguable that it won't, because of right now he's just able to survive off the fact that I am a freak. And yes, he'll always be 7'4" with the 7'11" wingspan, but the hip fluidity will eventually leave him. The ranginess and the ability to cover so much ground will eventually leave him. He'll still be able to affect shots at the rim because he's 7'4", but some of the other stuff that makes him a freak defender and an all-time level defender, that will eventually leave if he doesn't get better technically. If he gets better technically, it's over with. But as of right now, he just deters so many shots at the rim, and it's a reason why when he's been on the floor, they've looked serviceable, and this is easily the best roster that he's had throughout his first 2 years and going into year 3. It's the reason why that a lot of people, including myself, love the Spurs this year.
So let me ask you, though. So we talked about it with the Jazz. We talked about Walker Kessler, and then like how many positive defenders he played with. How many positive defensive players has Wemby shared the floor with since entering the league? Jeremy Sohan, and who else? Like, you could probably make the argument for Stephon Castle, but as a rookie, it's like, was he really a positive defender, or were we just seeing the tools? Like, was the consistency there? And it's like maybe the best point of attack defender besides Castle's like De'Aaron Fox, who he played 5 games with.
He played that many?
Maybe. I don't know. It might only been 1 game. I don't even know. But point being, like, the Spurs consistently have like this 115-ish defensive rating with Wemby on the court, which is like pretty good, like league average-ish. And then it's like the same talent as what you see with like the number 30, number 29, number 28 defense. So imagine what it looks like when he's got other talent.
Dude, Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant's like the best defensive wing he's played with, and Carter Bryant has not played a game yet. But
also, like, I'm more intrigued by double big stuff. Like, they got Luke Cornett now. Like, we're going to see some double big. We're going to see some double big.
You can have Wemby be a backline dude permanently for 8 minutes a game. What the hell?
All that's to say, like, Wemby, please stay healthy. Like, that's the main thing, dude. If Wemby stays healthy, we're going to witness an all-time great defensive career. We're going to witness a defensive player of the year next year. Shoe it in right now. Wemby's freaking awesome. Like,
he's gonna become the new Luka, where every year we're just saying, all right, this is the year.
Yeah. Well, for all of the like drawbacks we talked about with like technicality and stuff, like I do want to emphasize just how impactful of a defender he was the moment he stepped onto a court. It's insane. The tools are just, it's insane. It's insane. And then he does, like, there are technical aspects of his defense that are great, like the timing. Like, you can't just be big and block 4 shots in 20 minutes. That's not how it works. Like, there's a reason Wemby does it and not all of the other behemoths that come into the league. And I know Shaq likes to say bull is Wemby, but that's one of the big separators is Wemby knows how to use his tools. He knows how to apply them. So Yeah, Wemby's both of our number ones. I actually thought I'd be lower on Wemby going into this because of some of the playoff stuff I talked about, but after like really diving into it, I was like, I can't have anyone else. So my top 10 was 10 Jared Allen, 9 Jaren Jackson Jr., 8 Giannis, 7 Ivica Zubac, 6 Bam, 5 Evan Mobley, 4 AD, 3 Gobert, 2 Draymond, and 1 Wemby.
My top 10 was 10 Jaren Jackson Jr., 9 Walker Kessler, 8 Giannis, 7 Zubac, 6 Bam Adebayo, 5 Evan Mobley, 4 Rudy Gobert, 3 Draymond Green, 2 Anthony Davis, and 1 Victor Wembanyama.
So before I move on from this screen, I want to keep this up for a sec. This is one thing I was thinking about while making my list. Where would Alex Caruso rank on this list? Like, because I think we both agree he's the best non-big defender in the league. So where would Caruso land on your list?
Looking at my list right now, I don't think he'd be top 4. I think top 4 is set for sure. He'd be in that cluster for me between like 5 and 8.
When I did it, he was my number 7. I had him above Zoo but below Bam. And there was no other big or guard or non-big, I should say, I would have considered. The next non-big I would consider was probably like the group we talked about at the end of the wings list, like Amen Thompson, Tumani Kamara, Asar Thompson. And to me, they'd all be like right below Jared Allen. So right off the list. And then where you have Jaren Jackson Jr. Like I'd have those next group of wings and guards right below 10, like 11, 12, 13. So shout out Alex Caruso. I wanted to do that real quick. Is there anything else you wanted to add on any of these guys or just anything in general?
Talking this through makes me really excited about the season.
Oh, I'm so excited for the season, dude. You have no idea. I've already started my season previews. By the way, shameless plug.
Hoop venue. I watched the Nuggets one. Nuggets one was really well done.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm following that format for all of them. So if you're interested to see if you have a favorite team or just want to see different teams, what my expectations are for the upcoming season, I am releasing a video series for over the entire next month. A new video every single day. Yesterday I dropped the Nuggets. Today I did the Trailblazers. Tomorrow, spoiler. Well, actually, no, I can't even do that because this podcast isn't going to be up for like a week probably. So let me scratch that. The time we recorded this, I had just done the Trailblazers video. So if I'm all the way on the Lakers, I'm sorry. But the NBA in 31 days, I'm uploading 31 straight videos. It'll be a video on every team, and then the final episode power ranking all of the teams we talk about. So if you're interested to see my expectations for any team, Hoop Venue on YouTube. Of course, you can find me on all platforms at @TylerBritton_ or Hoop Venue. You can find Sean on Twitter at Sean_DAVI and on Instagram at Sean_Davis23. He's on YouTube at The Sports Headline Show and the Los Angeles Lakers Network. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment, all the good stuff. We very much appreciate 5-star ratings if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we'll catch you guys next time, starting our top 25 overall players.